Aloha and welcome to another edition of Tiki Tuesday Talks. Super excited for this one. We're going to welcome Julian Cox along with Ben Hart. Hey, Julian, what's going on, man?
Yeah, hey, what's poppin'?
Just hanging. Where are you at right now?
So I'm in Austin.
Austin, Texas. You know how to barbecue or what?
A lot of barbecue.
That's what I'd be doing. Have you been to Lockhart?
Yeah, I have. I was up there. I actually shot some stuff up there for some ad stuff I was doing, and it was amazing.
It's quite a town. That food, damn. We should take a trip there.
Oh, dude, that'd be amazing.
Ben, what's happening?
Just living it up in Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, it looks very tropical there these days. A little more than I remember.
Yeah, down at the new bar, Devil's Den, down in downtown Boise. They're renovating and about to open as a full-on tiki bar.
Look at that. We got the scoop on Tiki in Boise. That's pretty rad.
It's going to be cool.
All right. Very good. Steve, Aaron, you're frozen, but it's a good frozen.
I just wanted to see how long I could hold that pose. You know,
I saw it for a while. That was great. Well done.
Thank you.
This was me side texting him, telling him that he was frozen just now. Shenanigans.
I was going to say that's way too good. Usually it's some ridiculous face that you get frozen on.
Right. It's like, yeah, no.
Right on. Still got the plants. Everybody's got plants.
You know, that's where we're living.
Got to get through the winter somehow.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, very good. We're going to check in with you guys a little bit. All right. So, as usual, a little intro, Julian Cox, food and beverage entrepreneur. The topic is consulting, contracts, and business strategy, which is, as he mentioned and alluded to, extremely important for many people in our community in this environment. As usual, chat box and questions. If you guys are on Crowdcast or Facebook, please feel free to hit us with questions. We'll integrate them throughout. Please do share the event, watch parties, etc. Tip jar is Venmo at Christina with the K _A _Cox. The presentation will be 30 to 40 minutes, cocktail session for 10. Then we'll bring Ben back on for 5 questions. Julian, I'm going to take a stab at giving some of your background. It's obviously very storied. Huge talent from Los Angeles and San Francisco. You've earned 3 consecutive James Beard nominations in 2012 to 2014 for Outstanding Bar Program behind the restaurant Rivera in LA. Executive Director of Beverage for Sprout LA. You oversaw one of the largest restaurant expansions in LA history. Ton of amazing restaurants, which I've thoroughly enjoyed within that universe. Probably more restaurants and people that you've opened than can count, but I'm sure you're going to touch on some of that as we go. 2017, you were named one of the most influential bartenders of the past decade by Food and Wine. Spent 2 years in Chicago at Let Us Entertain You. Specifically, what we'll touch on here is your work at 3 Dots and a Dash, taking a small craft tiki bar past $6 million in revenue and earning a nomination for America's Best High Volume Bar at Tales of the Cocktail. You moved to SF to attaining their liquor license and opening Tartine, and tasked to open SFO Airport and a number of locations around the globe. So welcome. Excited to have you, man.
It's so good to be here.
Right on. Without further ado, I think we can jump into your content here. And as mentioned, we'll kind of throw some questions at you as we go.
Yeah, so for this, I wanted to kind of just talk about some basic stuff. And I think that some of the stuff is kind of intuitive, and I think some people kind of understand it. And then also want to throw in some more advanced strategic stuff that underlies this and makes it a little deeper and a little bit more granular. But the basic ideas, in general, we're going to talk a little bit about, first we're going to talk about business strategies. and ways that you can help win in this time. It's really important when some people are in situations where they only have outdoor dining or 30%, 50% capacity or 25% capacity. What are those things that you can do to kind of make your business win? So, right off the bat, these are the basics. And from there, we can get more granular. Obviously, increasing sales, increasing revenue is key. There's a number of different ways that you can do that, and we'll talk a little bit about those strategies here in a second. Driving down your labor costs. When you're driving down your labor costs, you can look at changing your service style, several other things you can do to kind of get your labor down, whether if we're talking about a bar, it's going to be different than a restaurant. I have extensive experience with both, but coming from a restaurant background, I definitely know some tricks to do that as well. Reducing your cost of goods and then increasing your profitability. So those are kind of three basics if you want to kind of take your business to the next level. The first thing you really need to know when you do that, you really have to have an understanding of your metrics, and you have to have a really good reporting, a really good accurate reporting. So first thing is making sure that your numbers are accurate, because if they're not accurate, you're not going to be able to affect your business properly. So assuming that you have that in place and that your managers or yourself are pretty meticulous with your numbers, then from that point, we can move on to the next one.
I think this is a good, I'll throw a question at you already, because what do you tend to look at in terms of the numbers? Like, what numbers do you need to see? And I'm sure you've walked into consulting situations or the like where, those weren't there, or what was needed wasn't there, right?
Yeah. So, first of all, it's really important to see what your top line, what your revenue looks like, because that really gives you an idea what the lifeline of your business is. So first thing that I'll either ask somebody when they're not open or when they are open and we're looking to take over a property or even consult on a property, I'll say, hey, do you have, your numbers so I can kind of get an idea what your sales are, so on and so forth, so I can see what your revenue looks like, how much money you're actually bringing in. That'll give me an idea what your audience is and how many people are, really, interested in coming in and spending money at your place, your bar, your restaurant, whatever it is. So that's first. Second of all, what I also will look down and see what your costs are. One of the biggest things that I try to do, and it's really important to remember this if you can, when you're looking at a restaurant project, it used to be 11%, but now it's about 8% of your rent should be, that should be 8% of your total revenue. So if you're, if you're looking at your total revenue or what you're making in general, your rent cost should be about 8% of that. And it used to be 11, and it's lower now, particularly in California, because it's expensive to do business, and there's just such a small amount of money that that you have wiggle room for. What I oftentimes see, particularly in projects I've turned down even recently to work at or consult on, these people will have $20,000-$30,000 rents, and they want to do $5-6 million in sales. Well, that's all well and good, but the reality is they probably are going to have a tough time reaching those goals in the first place. And if you do the math on that, if they don't reach those goals, they're already under from the beginning. So yeah. I really try to take a look at what those costs look like. From a bar perspective, more than just business, you want to look at your costs, all of your costs, but particularly what your cost, not just your pouring costs, but your produce costs. Oftentimes, my bartenders who I work for in consulting projects, we'll go back and forth, and then we'll look at what our costs were. And when you factor in produce, your pouring cost shoots through the roof. So, if you're using, wild heirloom, whatever, it's great. But if that cost is really high, you have to add that onto your cost of operating the bar. Well, then you have to either raise the price of the cocktail, or you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to keep that drink on.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes sense. I mean, I think I would imagine that given revenues are down almost across the board, and it's a pretty challenging environment, that equation on leases is only even more kind of extreme at this point, right? So, I mean, as you're looking at, certainly there's people opening places. I'm hearing from people about new things they're working on, et cetera. You almost have to kind of handicap that in a certain way as you're looking at a new opportunity, right?
100%, and it's really, really important for people to recognize this. If you're the one giving out the lease, it's in your best interest to make sure that your lessee obviously stays in that lease. Okay. Problem is, what happens now is that a lot of people are now defaulting on their leases, right? So some of these guys are like, oh, I'll just get somebody else. I'll just get somebody else to come and do it, or I'll get this money back at some time in the future. I'll get the money back that I've lost. But what ends up happening is the businesses that they currently are working with, the landlords, are going to just, file for bankruptcy. They're not going to get that money back. And if the economy, in the next year or so, corrects itself, they're going to be in a situation where they're, even worse off. But if you have to go back to your landlords and you have to negotiate, either some kind of rent, some people are doing a rent abatement and things like that. But at least if you get a more realistic rent, some of these rents right now in Los Angeles are so ridiculous that, these guys have been making hand over fist for a very long period of time. And if you have a good relationship with your landlord, you can make those decisions that are going to be able to help get you through this time period. And so I implore people constantly, I say, just go to your landlords and talk to them about this, because it's better to keep you as a tenant and have you actually succeed over the next few years than for them to hold on to you while you end up filing for bankruptcy. They lose it. They don't get their money back. Nobody wins.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
And the next one, to talk about a couple of things that are actually real world that you can look at for increasing sales and driving down labor costs. So some of these costs, are costs that you would have to incur if you haven't opened yet, or if you've already opened. But you can always be stealthy about how to do this properly. The most smart way you can do this is build a service well. And I'm talking about a service well that's non-customer facing, or if it is customer facing, it's somehow blocked off so that it's unaccessible. A dedicated service well will massively increase your sales, without a doubt. And it's one of the easiest things you can do because it helps you get drinks out quicker. We'll talk a little bit about that too, I'm sure, later on. But 3 Dots and a Dash is a very famous service well where 2 bartenders can work side by side. Paul McGee designed that. He did an excellent job. One of the coolest ones I've seen. And it's a really great way to kind of get yourself in that position where, where you can make some money. So redesign and a layout, we're going to talk about that also in a second. There's a slide where I'll explain some redesign stuff. You don't have to think redesign is now I got to spend a bunch of money at my bar or restaurant. You can do this strategically to help make more money or increase sales. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. Driving down labor. One of the biggest things that you can do is change your service style. I think everybody is thinking about this these days. Service style. And changing your service style was one of the first things that I learned when I owned my first restaurant and bar called Brilliant Shine. And when this was a regular high-end craft cocktail bar, it had Peruvian food, and then in the back, in the front, we turned that into a tiki bar called Brilliant Shine Rum Bar. That was really my first rum bar before 3 Dots and a Dash. And a big part of that was when we started looking at the hard numbers, we had really great top line sales. Problem was we're running this place like a fine dining restaurant. It wasn't quite fine dining, but we had back servers, and we basically had to just change our service style. And as soon as we changed our service style, all of a sudden our labor costs plummeted and our profits increased dramatically. So if you can really get your mindset on, hey, how can I do this with less people? How can I do this or get more people involved to do more work? I know it sounds, tough, but as a business person, you have to think about those strategies and how to make them actually work in real time. So instead of having, 2 or 3 back servers, how can you do it with 1? Instead of running, 5 servers, can you run with 3 and still keep a high level of service there? If you're a manager, you should try to run as many servers as you possibly, as little service as you possibly can while giving the same type of service while you're all hands in. A lot of managers that get paid to manage don't really want to be on the floor, or they don't want to really do the work. And honestly, if they're getting paid, those guys should be on the on the floor doing the work to help their team succeed anyway. So again, these are things that you can do in any situation, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, that can help control your labor. Also, keeping track of it helps. So if you budget out your labor like you budget out anything else, it's a really great way to kind of stay on top of that. batching cocktails. It's just the easiest thing. It's trendy. It's hot. But not only batching cocktails, I'm talking about tapping cocktails. And tapping cocktails, was popular about 5 years ago. It still has, popularity and stuff. I think people are liking to can and stuff now, which is great. That all works. Same kind of idea in terms of helping with efficiency. But in particular, if you are able to build a tap system, or if you have the money before you open to build a tap system into your wells, into your bars, the payback on it is absolutely astronomical. And I'm talking about 20 to 25% increase in revenue. It's one of the first things that we did at 3 Dots and a Dash when I took over. I saw the amount of people that we had in the space. It wasn't a huge space. It was about 2,800 square feet. But we would do numbers upwards of $30,000 of liquor sales on the weekends at 3 Dots and a Dash. So we're talking about some major business for a small square footage. So my big question was, hey, how can we make this more efficient? We already had an amazing well system in the back that Paul McGee designed. I love that. And we already had like a very, very strong bartending team. Basically what we did at that point is I was like, look, we need to spend the money to put a tap system in. So each station got 3 taps. It cost us about $15,000 to put that in. Now, granted, that's a cost that, we had to put in, at the end. But if you think about the stuff in the beginning and you build it in, you can roll it in, the cost is cheaper, so on and so forth. But that one situation, we could then tap our a la carte cocktails, and then the large format cocktails, which is another way to increase your sales, by the way. The large format cocktails, the base would come out of the base for those cocktails would come out of the tap, and then we would add the other ingredients on top of that to turn it into another cocktail. So now we can make a cocktail for 5 to 6 people in 2 seconds that used to take them 3 to 5 minutes to put together. So that just completely changed our financial situation. I mean, we were already profitable before, but we started hitting major numbers. And we're talking about $5.6 million in liquor sales alone. It was an absolutely incredible success. I mean, and our investment was $15,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point, especially in this environment. I guess again, as somebody who's involved but external, it kind of seemed like it had its moment. It was like a hot thing to do, but it's not necessarily just thinking about it as a gimmick or something to show people you're doing. It's thinking about it as an efficiency driver and a way to really maximize all your labor costs and maximize what you can output. So I think it is a good call out for people to be thinking about that, along with frozen when it's warmer, changing service styles to kind of get through and navigate this as best as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a question, but Adrian says, I still have PTSD from that beautiful well.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to work back there. And it was cool the way they did it. I wanted them to put the handles in kind of on the side of the wells when we put the tap system in, and it just looks even more like a cockpit after we did that. It's like your pilot comes straight out of the tap, and then all of a sudden, if you're doing a large format, you turn it into a zombie, and it's it was fun. It was a really fun time.
Right on.
So a couple of the ones here that I wanted to talk a little bit about. One is something I think is hilarious, which is the marketing aspect of it. And I definitely myself didn't take it as seriously as I probably should during 90% of my career. But digital marketing, social media, and marketing in general is really important. Probably digital marketing even more than PR marketing. I have definitely come around to that realization. I'm a little old school, and I kind of always felt like, well, if you put in the work and you actually do the work, then people are going to notice. And there's some of that that's absolutely true, and I think a lot of it is true. But there's something to be said about the idea of being able to have a presence online. And your bar should have that. It'll help you with sales. It'll help you get your brand out there and your own personal brand out there. So it's definitely something to think about.
Totally agreed. I think it's also important. Well, one, as somebody who shares a lot of what people are doing at their bar from our platforms, we see who's doing it right and who's maybe missing an opportunity, which there's a big divide on that. The other thing is, I think people just don't know what's going on right now, right? So you've got to let them know. Like if you've got a to-go program, you got to like hammer it. Like I'm sitting here, I would love to know what people are doing. And you really have to go out of your way to find that information because it is evolving all the time, right? But you got to make it as easy as possible for consumers, I would say, if you're running a program like this and adapting as things change week to week, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could just tell you in my experience, I've got two main businesses. The one business I started up just in January, which was a more production and kind of social media production-based business. Little did I know that COVID was around the corner, or maybe even here already, who knows? But the point was that I had to switch gears almost entirely. I went from training bartenders almost my whole, traveling around and training bartenders, building programs, to having nobody to train or work with. So making that switch to training people online or working with stuff online was the only way I could reach people. So it was definitely a powerful tool.
Question back to batch cocktails. What did you say you increased sales by percentage-wise with that implementation?
It ended up being 22%. When I told them what it was going to be, I told them it was going to be 15 to 25%. I wasn't 100% sure. But we've done this before in Los Angeles at a couple of our properties, which was, we built one property with the tap system in the wells already situated. So it's like a cockpit and you pull down and the guests can't see it, but it's just something that is underneath the bar. And we did fantastically with that. And then we retrofitted Petty Cash Taqueria, which is another place that does incredible volume in margarita sales alone. But that was the other place that we put the margarita on tap. There's a special way that we did it because I still believe it needs to be shaken, but we still got it out of the tap. Then we did like a quick shake afterwards, and it was negligible how different it was than if you made one from scratch. And the fact that it was so much faster than actually building it, that just massively increased our sales again. And so I kind of had that metric to go off of when I came to Rich Millman at 3 Dots and a Dash. I said, hey, let's do this. Here's what it's going to cost. Here's what I think. And when you're dealing with, millions of dollars of liquor sales, that, 15 to 20%, it ended up being 22% increase in sales. I mean, it was like, that was a hero moment for me. It was a very good feeling to feel like your bosses were really proud of the work that you did, because it's tough when you take a project like that's already busy. One of the biggest things I've learned is you actually lose more money when you're super, super successful because you aren't paying attention as much to the numbers, right? So when you're doing really, really well and you have all this money coming in, a lot of times people are just riding off the high. They're not realizing how much the money on the bottom and they're losing. So by showing them, hey, if you tighten this up, all of a sudden we're bringing more money to the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of people are undergoing that. I know personally we underwent that too, and just said, okay, we need to readjust. And then you realize where there's a lot of fat because you're so focused on top line growth as a business. You're not looking at it. And you need to look at both. And I agree. I mean, it's a set of simple metrics that you have to establish.
Yeah.
You can't track everything. You can't there has to be key elements there.
100%. That's it for that one.
All right. Here we go. Got a lot of words here.
Yeah, so I just wanted to I want to touch on this real quickly. I'm going to bounce in and out of saying, some nerdy, restaurant facts for you guys, but also I do want you to understand a couple of these things. So when you talk about reducing cost of goods and increasing profitability, there's a couple of things that is really important to know. And this one point is really awesome to know. I wanted to put it out there, which is every percentage point reduction in food costs is equivalent to $100,000 in net improvement. But a 2% in sales is equal to a 10% reduction in food costs. So,
wow. Yeah.
so if you're in a restaurant, it's really important to understand that, it's a sales game, right? So you need to have a highly trained, motivated staff constantly. You talk to any major restaurant entrepreneur that does this, whether it be Rich Millman, Danny Meyer, anybody out there who does this, they really understand that you need to be able to train properly. And I've kind of laid my hat on it, and I've put my career on more on the people that I've trained and the work that I've done in the training field than anything I've ever created in cocktails, because the reality is the training is what makes whatever you're doing really great, not only for people or your guests, which is the most important thing, the people that you serve, but also for the bottom line for business and also for the people's lives. They leave working with you and they know what a high standard is. They don't want to lower their standard. And not only that, you actually have a business. It shows you, business wise, why it works so well. So that's just one of those things I think it's really, really cool to know. I think you guys had some of the team from Trash Tiki here doing a talk a little bit about reducing waste. Another great opportunity. I mean, we waste so much money in the industry. Coming up with those solutions that make sense to reduce waste. I know it's a little, okay, how are we going to do it? But honestly, if you're able to find out a way to use those items or some of that stuff, again, it's just something that if you really want to make extra money, that's what you can do. This next bullet point was just to talk about there are different ways that you can, kind of barter through and find purchasing, even purchasing in bulk or working with different purveyors to really drive down your costs. And that's kind of what this part was, to figure out what these discounts could be. Sometimes, and if you're in LA, this is crazy. Sometimes going to downtown LA and the markets, like the downtown markets, that have like all the fruit from Mexico and stuff. You go down there to get limes, you'll be getting limes for $20 a case. But if you are using LA Specialty, no offense to LA Specialty or another big specialty company that serves you those limes, they're going to give them to you for upwards of 60 a case. So you're spending 3 times as much for something that you can get somewhere else. I mean, I literally here could probably pack up a large, I wouldn't do it, but I probably could get a large amount of produce here and ship it to LA and spend less money on produce. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just different ways that if you really want to get granular, get into the numbers and figure it out, the biggest way that you can affect your cost of goods is really getting inside and understanding what you're being charged. And a lot of produce companies make a lot of money on your mistakes, man. Yeah. You're not really diligent about looking at those invoices, and you're not diligent about making sure that you got what you got. That's where the dollars go. So
I think it's another point of something that when you're cruising and you're busy, it's kind of wave the hand, like all good. And you can't have that discipline in a scenario like this. And really, you shouldn't be operating that way anyway. You should always be looking at that. It does get hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you're in the moment and you're focused on top line. But yeah, it's a good call out for sure.
I got to give a shout out to Kevin Berry over at 3 Dots and a Dash, who there when I was there, we talked a lot about this, and he spent a lot of time getting to the bottom of it. I mean, because when we were buying 50 cases of pineapples and it was citrus to the height of the ceiling in a room, and we would go through it in a day. When you start finding out where that money's going and you put something together, he was really great at figuring out how to cut those costs. So,
right on, great dude. What's up, Kevin?
Yeah. So a little bit about just reducing labor dollars. We talked a little bit about that before without compromising quality. We talked a little bit about this as well, mentoring and helping keep your team strong and consistent will help you reduce costs and make your team better. So it's just kind of touching on what I said before. Okay, so I think this is probably pretty timely. Talking about additional revenue streams, everybody's on this right now. Again, delivery services usually are going to tell you about how much that they, are bringing in. They're kind of like not our favorite people if you're in the industry or you're a restaurant owner. A lot of these delivery services take a lot of your dollars. Some of it, I think, it's usually about 30%. Unless you're a big time earner, you can kind of barter that. But a lot of these companies charge a lot of money. So you'd want to look at, your own delivery systems, delivering your own stuff. But again, using them if you have to is another way to increase your revenue. E-commerce, selling through.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So is the path to literally hire for that yourself, or is there some other third-party options that you can look at that aren't necessarily giving those companies that huge piece of the percentage of the pie, but still allow you to make this viable without like hiring up, a delivery force?
Oh, you're talking about delivery,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I know here in Austin, what happened, particularly during lockdown, and even now, people said, "Hey, look, you can go through Caviar / DoorDash or whatever, but we prefer if you go through us. We'll give you a better discount if you go through our website. Go through us." I'm not sure if they use like an Uber Rush or something like that to get
right.
to get the product to you, or they use their own people. But one of the cool things is they were actually able to keep on their people and pay them hourly to deliver the stuff. And it made more sense for them, particularly the restaurants, because 30% is a hell of a lot of money, man. Especially places are high-end restaurants doing like bento boxes and like, it's like
yeah, it's wild. I mean, when I saw that stuff coming out, I really couldn't believe it. And I personally always go direct now.
Yeah.
Realizing, and I mean, there's a significant chunk of time where I probably had no idea, and it wasn't maybe as relevant to the point of all the conversation we're having. Like, if you're cruising and it's a little thing on the side, oh, whatever, let him take the margin.
Yeah.
But that's now become your lifeline. Obviously, that margin's absurd. It's not justified, right? So
that's got to change. I mean, it's got to change. I don't know it was great while they were able to do it. I just don't know anybody who, I know a lot of people are I think DoorDash is looking to get bought now or have an IPO. So I read something about that. So, I mean, these companies are, doing well, but I mean, if 30% is just a tremendous, we'll talk a little bit about some of my numbers and like what I charge, but that's a lot more.
Yeah, that's a lot of margin. That's a lot of margin.
I think everybody's on this, the house-made product lines and stuff that you can sell, whether it's syrups, mixers, RTDs, all that kind of stuff, depending on where you're at. A lot of people are doing it. I just wanted to mention that it's a great idea. It's not a substitute for being open 100% for business at full capacity ever. It will never replace it. And it's like, no matter what laws change, it'll allow you to sell your own product. That's great, but it's still not going to put asses in the seats like how it was before. So although it's an additional revenue stream, I still think that some people are like, oh, we need to do this to survive. I just think that it may help you survive a few more months, but another year of this, which a lot of people are saying, is quite possible. It's not sustainable.
Right.
And then never forget the all valuable private events. Oftentimes, it's one of the easiest revenue streams. It's much more profitable than a restaurant. If you don't have a private events program, or you're sitting on a large bar or restaurant and you're not doing private events, I guess outside private events, some of this was written before pandemic, but private events, again, are important. Obviously, if you're social distancing now, but in general, private events are down everywhere. But as a general rule, it's a great additional source of revenue that people just don't oftentimes really understand how much money you can make.
I mean, I'm in Vegas. The town's built on it, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen small conferences happening. Most of the large stuff obviously is not happening into fall next year. But I think it's important to be thinking about it, even if it's not feasible for the next 2-3 months. Is it feasible? Can this be part of your rebuild in April and May, right? Because I think the reality is, as soon as it's reasonably possible from a health standpoint, people are dying to get out. They want to see each other. They want to do these things. And, there's a lot of companies that have done very well in the midst of all this, even though our industry is sitting here shattered, right? So I think it's a really important thing to not forget about.
If you're a restaurant that hasn't opened yet and have a large outdoor space, or you have a large outdoor space and bar and you haven't considered opening it, that's pretty much the only way you're going to be able to make money if things are closed, is doing stuff outdoors. So consider that an option.
Got it.
So this is one fun question you always want to ask yourself. And when I walk around to a bar, I will look at certain things, and the first thing I do is look at the length of the bar, what happens with the bar, how it's set up. So
I've been to that bar. Had a lovely pina colada over there.
Yeah. I've in there for sure. So when I first got to Tartine, one of the things I had noticed was that there were about 4 seats that you can see that's at a lower level in that picture, and that lower level extends another like maybe 10 feet across the bread making area. Well, first thing I thought to myself was, oh wow, I mean, I wonder what each one of these seats costs. So you basically figure out how much volume the total restaurant does, and you can even look at the specific section that you're in. This is the bar section, it's an L section. It comprises tables along the window there, and then around the bar. You add up all those tables, figure out how much revenue you did out of there a year, and divide that by how many seats you have, and you know how much each seat costs. That's a really important number to know, because once you figure that out, it became really easy. It made sense to me. They only had one well. I thought automatically you could put a service well here, and you could have a service bartender take care of these 4 seats. You just added 4 seats to the bar. So we ended up doing a small $12,000 renovation, and we were able to make over $100,000 a year just in these 4 seats. So it makes a big difference, again, in terms of what you can do at your bar. Now, again, not everybody has an opportunity to spend the $10,000 to $12,000, especially in this time period. But if you're taking over a space, you're looking at possibly buying a space, or you're in a current space and you're realizing that you could have extra seats there. Nobody was sitting here because they just had a bunch of stuff sitting there.
Right.
So,
I think the insight here to me is not necessarily exactly how you did it, but like I would just look at that, as a layman and be like, that's just dead space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't even think about utilizing it. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, whatever, throw some drinks across the rail there,
Yeah, and this is one of the things I learned a lot in Chicago with Rich Mellman. Rich Mellman said, hey, listen, every single seat is an opportunity to, make money, and you have to look at each seat, how you can add seats where it makes sense. But one of the biggest problems with Tartine was it was so busy that nobody could actually get any food, or people are waiting to sit down and they're trying to tackle each other to sit down. It's a lot like Bestia, it's just like everybody wants to sit down, and it's just kind of a clusterfuck. So the more seats you can give people, the more money you can drive.
Yeah. Yep. Getting a seat at Bestia.
Yeah.
Forever challenge.
So ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, here we go. This is the layout here.
Yeah, so this is the back layout. So giving you an idea of what it looked like behind that bar originally, kind of what we did. They really only had one well. We went in and gave them a 3-compartment sink and some ice freezers here. And instead of running 1 bartender, we started to run 2 bartenders. And they didn't have a liquor program before I got there. I helped them get their liquor license. But after they got their liquor license, we were able to do some pretty incredible numbers over at Tartine. Our revenue shot through the roof, and our sales shot through the roof, because you need to have another bartender. Running 1 bartender is very, very tough to make any considerable amount of money at any bar. 2 bartenders and 2 wells, you can do some pretty incredible cocktails. And our magic number to do $1 million in cocktail sales, you need a minimum of 3 wells. A minimum of 3 wells. And if you want to do multiple millions of dollars of cocktails, you're going to need to have a 4th or 5th well. I've never seen it done with less. I'm sure it's probably possible. If you have taps and something like that, but I've done several $1 million cocktail programs, several in Los Angeles, and a couple in Chicago, as well as in San Francisco. It's just not easy to do unless you have those wells.
And just for someone who's not as familiar, that's really just about taking advantage of churning out cocktails at the busiest moment to like maximize your potential revenue at that time period.
Yeah, the other big part about this, and I want people to understand this as well, is that you also need to have enough people to take care of people well.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's all well and good to get these cocktails out quickly if you're not taking care of people. One of the things that candidly was tough about Tartine is it just has a really bad reputation for taking care of people at any of the restaurants, because they're so busy, and they just didn't staff correctly or train correctly for a long period of time. So what we really spent a lot of time doing is training the bartenders, retraining them, and then making sure we had enough staff so that they could cover for each other. And what happens is you get faster turn times, because people just want their check. They don't want to wait for 20 minutes to get the check because you're already losing money. So again, especially if you're in management, you have to have the foresight to understand that you need to have enough staff to turn tables. You know, just because you have one person on staff doesn't mean you're operating amazing. You need to make sure you have enough support to do that.
So finding that balance. And for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Tartine is all day and tonight, right? So you got a lot of people coming in for different occasions, right? Some people just want to come grab something quick, have a glass of wine. Yep. Some people are hanging out, having a meeting, eating more, you know, what have you. So I think there's just understanding that environment has got to be pretty critical too, I imagine.
Yeah. So this is a poster that was at this Beast in Copenhagen in their Italian restaurant. It's on the corner wall. It takes up the whole corner wall. I thought it was pretty cool. And like the guests would come in and take pictures of it, and they loved it. It was cool to see
the front version right now.
It was cool to see that people loved it, which felt good. I mean, I think I was there, you know, post-Trump, but politics are a part of the game. So if we're going to talk about consulting and contracts, which is another big thing that I wanted to kind of share with everybody and answer questions with and talk about a little bit, is really important. I know I wrote down how to write a proposal, but I think a lot of people can figure that out. I'm going to get into the depths of that, but I wanted to talk a little bit about politics because it's something that's really important in my life, and also in terms of dealing with people. Because when you're in a consulting situation, you have to be very aware of how your decisions affect other people. And if you're in a partnership, I've had several partnerships with many people in the industry, many of which you guys all probably know. And some of those partnerships have worked out really, really great. Some of them haven't worked out really well. And I'll tell you what, politics is one of the number one reasons why they either worked out well or didn't work out well. Because if your clients don't think that you're doing what you need to be doing, or they don't feel like you understand what they need, understanding the political landscape. And I'm not talking about, your political beliefs. I'm talking about the politics of running a bar or a restaurant as a consultant. That's one thing that's very important. And so, if you roll in there, cocky and that everything, and that, your clients don't know what they're talking about, that's bad politics. You know what I mean? If you show up whenever after it's already busy and your staff is going down and they hate you, that's bad politics. So I wanted to mention that because, consulting kind of sometimes has this thing of like, oh, I can do whatever I want. It's a star-studded job and it's great. It actually sucks a lot. And we're going to talk a little bit about that coming forward. And I'll answer any questions you guys have. I've done consulting on a major level throughout most of my career. And so I can speak to it pretty strongly. How to structure your deal. I want to talk a little bit about how to structure some ideas that will be helpful for you guys. It's going to be a little bit more, that part in this end part is going to be a little bit more free flowing. I don't want to give anybody any specific legal advice, so I'm not writing anything down. But I will tell you anything you want to know about contracts and my contracts, and I'll explain the almighty contract and how to look at that, and how to build passive income with your consulting, and how to build on it without signing a non-compete, which is very strategic, but it's very lucrative if you can do it right.
Got it.
So I'm going to go over this really quickly, just a quick thing for everybody. If you want to write proposals, I have a couple of them in front of me that I've done it, and I want to give you a quick overview. But in this, I'm actually going to tell you what one of my proposals was that I've done actually just this year that I had just completed. So just something to give you an idea of like how it works and kind of how to talk about it. One thing that you can do that I like to do is give people a mission and a vision based on whatever your client's telling you. So if they want to, open a restaurant, give them a vision that's exciting and compelling for that restaurant. Give them an understanding of, what that can do for them. And I think that would be a really great way to start. 2, you want an overview of the services offered. You want to be really clear and concise about what they can expect from you and what you're going to do for them and how that's going to benefit them. And again, you want to look at it from their perspective. And you want to also give them an opportunity to see what your value is. You want to detail the work, make sure that each one of those bullet points, makes sense. You can back it up with empirical data, and that you know what you're talking about. And this works for anything, whether it works for a business proposal. If I'm looking at a property and I want to get this property, I'll talk to my investors and I'll write a proposal. And the same kind of use the same process. And then fees, payment, scope proposal. If you're consulting, this is something that you want to talk about. I'm going to be completely honest with you about what my fees are and what I charge and what I've heard other people getting paid and what they've got charged. And I'll tell you why it's really important. It's important because if we don't all talk about this stuff, nobody knows. And the problem that happened with me when I was in the early mid-aughts bartending and taking on consulting projects is nobody really knew how much money we made. Like, I didn't know exactly how much other people made. I knew what Sammy Ross got paid because he did a project, Comme Ça, that I worked at when I was a young bartender. So I knew I wanted to get paid at least that much when I did projects. So we just, you know what I mean? But then there was a couple of guys that, and you have them in probably every city that's, on this, chat right now that does the low ball, will take any job for, half the price. I strongly suggest that everybody know what you should be getting paid so that we can raise the bar for everyone. Part of the problem is if they're going to get somebody else to pay, cut you off, it just ruins everybody's, the tide sinks for everybody. Because the reality is people have money to pay for this stuff. And if we talk about it and we know we won't accept mediocrity, we'll continue to fight for, the pay that we all deserve. I'm not saying everybody's at the level that maybe I'm at or Sammy's at or above us or Tony Abaganon or Bill DeGroff is at or that. But the point is, it's helpful to know so that we can all, rise these ships together.
I got a question here. Are you coming in with your pricing, or do you ask a budget first, kind of along those lines?
I always ask a budget. Because if you're consulting, one of the things that is hard about consulting is there's no stability there. If you sign a longer term contract, yes, there's some stability, but the reality is I don't want to tell a client that I'm too expensive for them because that's not necessarily true. They might think $10,000 is expensive, but they may not think $1,000 is expensive, and they might just ask me for a couple of cocktails, and
right,
I'll take the $1,000. I might need money that time.
Send me $1,000. I'm ready.
You know what I mean? Also,
I'll copy and paste some Julian cocktails and send them.
Also, the $10,000 might not be so expensive if you spread it over 3 months.
Right.
So I always talk to the clients to get an idea what they want, because it's important that they get what they want and they feel like they got more than what they had bargained for, so that they want to have you work with them again.
Along those lines, do you leave yourself room in the detail of work to change as it goes so that, with more work, price goes up, or is it kind of like one static thing? How does that work?
So there's a couple different ways to do it. And when I talk about, the consulting for work, for bartending or bar creation or restaurant creation or restaurant management, because I do both, what I talk about is, I guess, first of all, what they're looking for. And then what was the question? Wait, what was the question again?
So let's say the scope of work changes, right?
Oh.
Let's say there's a variability to it, or things get added on, or you think it's this, then it's this. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So most clients, a client that I was working with, or I'm currently working with right now, doing some of my video production work with, had us do a project, and they're like, "Hey, we just added on double what, just invoice us for what,
Okay.
what we went over." There's a kind of a camaraderie there, particularly if you work with people who are in the industry and they know.
Right.
When you talk to people who don't know and they're putting things on your plate, that's where the contracts come in. So, I don't want to say that I just say, "Hey, look at the contract." I'm not that kind of a person. I know people who are like, "It's not in the contract. I don't do it. Fuck off." That's just not my. Can I swear?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. But I think in the contract, if you want to do something or you don't want, and we're going to get to contracts in a second, or you don't want to do something specifically, I would make sure it is in the contract. Yeah. But it's an off-the-cuff thing that's an added work. It's definitely good a sign of goodwill to try to help them where you can. If it's a thing where, you know, they want you to start working all this time to help their labor out when you're just a consultant and that's not in your contract, that's almost usury at a certain point in time. You can do that for once in a while to help them out, but I would not be doing that, because that's not what a consultant does. That's not what a consultant does.
Right. All right. Well, let's go in detail here. We'll look forward to hearing.
Quick details. This is just one of the vision things that this is from a legit client of mine. I thought it might be helpful for you guys to see. They wanted to do a world-class beverage, industry-leading non-alcoholic beverage line. I told them that I'd kind of utilize their ingredients to create a couple of different flavors. One that's good with whiskey, one's good with tequila, one that's good with vodka. These are like non-alcoholic sparkling mixers that are going to be bottled or canned. It's something that they wanted, and that's kind of what they told me about. So I gave them a vision for what we could do. So that's the vision one.
Gotcha.
So then again, I give them the overview of the bullet points of what it was offered. Giving them an idea of experience from my experience in production with label designs, so on and so forth. Talking a little bit about they wanted different SKUs, so giving them an idea what those SKUs would be. Working with the team to perfect the product. So you know, this was a remote job, so it took me. I'd have to, you know, come up with the formulation, send them the formulation. They would taste it with their executive team. They'd send their notes to me. I take their notes. I'd ask for more product, send it back to them. So I'd work with their team to correct the product, and then basically, you know, how I would get the product out there, who I would talk to, how to build upon what the product is after it's produced in their labs. So that's kind of the idea of what I did in that situation. So this is it. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the numbers. Yeah, let's go to the numbers. So the last part of that was talking about the retainer. You know, this is what it's going to cost me for me to actually do this. This is what the term is going to be. This is what the total fee is minus the retainer. And then, you know, I requested future involvement contingent upon budget and scheduling, because if this product blows up and does, you know, gets sold to Vitamin Water or something like that, I was like, we're not the guy who helped. So, you know, that was just part of it. Giving you an idea of like what something like this looks like. And again, everybody's budget's different. Everybody's things are different. You know, the relationships are different, so on and so forth. But I wanted to give you guys a real world example.
And how does that relate to what you might charge for a restaurant consult or a beverage?
Yeah. So I have a couple of contracts right here, and I wanted to kind of go over and kind of talk a little bit about, you know, how to build your deal. Yeah. And there's a couple different ways to do it. There's the primary ones that I do. What I prefer to do is I prefer to do longer term contracts. So essentially what it is this management contract where, you know, say it's Tartine, I'll sign a 3-year deal. It's going to be, you know, X amount, which I typically do anywhere between 2 to 4% of beverage sales. And that gets paid out. And then there's usually a monthly management fee. For me, that's what it typically is. Now, if you do it that way, one of the good things about doing it that way is when you sign the contract, you know, it's legally binding, but you basically, it's more safe. It gives you more of a cushion because you know you're going to be working with these guys. They know that you're invested in working with them. So, you know, I always like the idea of shooting for, you know, somewhere around a year. You know, when you get more established, you can probably do a multiple year deal. But in that way, you lock yourself into a payment system, and also they lock you in. So I wasn't working for Tartine. I did other jobs. I did other things, you know, on the side because it wasn't a non-compete style of a job. But at the same time, you have a vested interest in making sure that they're successful and they get their programs off the ground.
Got it. And then how does that, when you take that, you know, 2-4%, whatever that might be, is that like a quarterly payout that you arrange with them?
We do it as a monthly payout. One of the big problems is, especially with my numbers, is that they start to look really big after 3 months. And it doesn't feel that big every month. The problem is with a lot of these companies, and this happened with Tartine, candidly, is that when they start missing payments and they start not paying these payments, they start adding up pretty quickly. So I think there's a couple of ways to go about it. The one way I just told you, where you sign the contracts, the longer term contracts. But another way to do it, which I've done several times, and I've even done it this way this year and last year, is do shorter contracts for, say it's a month or 2 months to do something. If you stay more than a month, the positive part about that is you're going to have a more tangible effect on the staff that's there. If you're just there for a couple of weeks doing an in and out project, I typically will never sign those deals because it's always a nightmare. I think when you're younger, maybe a little bit, it's your first couple of jobs, consulting jobs, take those and get your feet wet and understand how this works to a degree, and understand how it is like to deal with the culture of that environment. But the reality is you probably are going to want to sign a deal that's probably at least for a month to 2 months so that you give them an opportunity to really have you train staff properly. And usually when you open up a restaurant or a bar, you have turnover, usually pretty quickly. You realize people suck or they're not good at their job or they're stealing from you or they're lying to you. Or it's like, okay, so if you're only there for a couple of weeks, you're in and out. It is a consulting job, but
half of them leave, and then the new people never even saw you.
And also your reputation. Usually people will be like, well, that person did that job, but they're not really involved. Whereas you may not be able to see me every day, but usually people know that that's Julian's program. He does that program and he keeps it up. And oh wow, that makes sense. This is good. This is your finger on it.
I mean, I'll say from someone who's sold a fair amount in the on-premise environment, there's so many instances of some consultant was here a month ago, I'm now running it.
Oh God,
I don't care what they did. I'm totally changing it. Let's talk. It's just like of course there's going to be an evolution, but it's just like this, like paid for it, did it, nobody's into it, staff doesn't like it, whatever, new person comes in, any number of those stories that mean that you kind of disregard what happened and the effort that was put in there and the money spent, and it kind of got you nothing ultimately.
It's hard. It's hard. It's why I implore you with all that I'm saying. And the most important thing is that you put 110% into what you're doing, because if that happens, unfortunately, if somebody else comes in and says that, then the staff that was there that liked the person who was there beforehand, they're most likely going to leave or they're not going to want to stay there. And at the end, everybody loses. So the whole idea of consulting is that they get to have the expert in the field work there and be able to use your name, which is worth something, to be able to produce the results they want. You just want to make sure that you give them the best of yourself, and that will limit the possibility of that happening. It's unfortunate, but I see it happen, like I said, all the time.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this.
Yeah. So structuring your deal, we did kind of touch on it a bit. There's a couple different kinds of consulting, like we said, that you can look at. And, obviously offline, we can always, anybody who has questions, we can always talk more about it. But in terms of the deals that I typically do, you'd want to shoot for a little bit longer term. So, at least a month to 2 months if you can, just to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on there, and longer if you can, just so that you can continue to make an ongoing and lasting change in the company. You can always do, the other thing you can do if you are a named bartender and you're doing a project that you're not specifically proud of working there, you can also sign a contract for them to use your services, but not your name, because your name is worth something. So that's also popular. You see that happen a lot in places like New York, where there's some pretty famous bartenders that they don't want their name on the project, but they're willing to help out. So that's another thing that you can do. And again, the other way you can structure it is in terms of your pay system. You can take a monthly fee, or you can take a percentage fee, or you can take both. I typically try to take both. And again, if they're a busy place and they're applying the stuff that I'm teaching, they're going to be doing so much volume that they're going to be in a position to pay for you the small amount that it costs to pay you in relation to what their sales are. It's nothing.
Right.
I mean, they're going to pay DoorDash way more money than they're going to pay you. So
fair enough. You want to touch on this no signature, no deal component?
So I just want to be perfectly candid with you. I have failed at this so many times. I've made deals. I've taken handshake deals. I've taken call deals. I've taken deals where, we're going to make this work. Don't worry about it. Oh yeah, we don't have to sign a contract. Oh yeah, we're going to get you. I haven't got you the contract yet. It's coming. It's coming. It's bullshit. You need the deal. If people care about working with you, they're not going to be afraid to sign a contract. It's not like, all it is the memorialization of an agreement between two people. I mean, Tupac got one signed on a piece of toilet paper from Suge Knight. Okay, you can get a contract. It's a contract. You know what I mean?
Have you signed toilet paper?
Have you signed toilet paper? Yeah. No, and again, I think it's also important because it manages expectations. The question before, if you want to manage those expectations in those contracts, you can be very, very serious. It lays it all out very clearly. So in mine, I have a refusal to non-compete. Also, it has in it that I'm not responsible for the financial success or failure of the business. That's their responsibility. It also says I'm not a manager, so therefore I can't hire or fire. I can also get paid W-9, and I'm not on the employee payroll. You also can stipulate how you want to be paid. I now sign contracts where half the money is due up front because I've had clients just not pay, and really prominent clients that you guys probably know, and I've had to go after them and try to get the money back. So I've failed at this so many times, and I just cannot tell you enough. The amount of money it's going to cost you to get somebody as a lawyer to do this is fairly cheap compared to what money you lose if you don't.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, that was rad. Maybe let's jump into this cocktail here.
Sweet. Yeah. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna make this cocktail for you guys. It's called the Sour Patch Kid. I've done a few versions of this drink, but this is one of my favorites. This is we do like version and remix number 2, 3, 4. This is like remix number 5 of Sour Patch Kid. But I love this style of cocktail. It's fun, it's whimsical, and guests really like it. So anyway, I'm gonna use 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lime juice. I'll give you a little view of what I'm doing here.
There you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to be using.
You're wearing pants.
Yeah, I wore pants today. Cuban. So this is some wonderful De Kuyper here. I'm going to use a ½ ounce of Pesh. Thank you for the sponsor today.
Indeed.
Just 1/4 of the De Kuyper sour. And another shout out to our friends at Sipsmith. They sent me this wonderful gin. This is their lemon drizzle, the shizzle. Use 1.5 ounces of that. Okay, so fresh lime juice, the 2 De Kuypers. And then right here, I made a sour apple cordial. Anybody that knows me, I always try to add a couple of different layers of the same flavor in. So we're just going to do 1.5 ounces of that apple cordial. That recipe is in there, and this cordial goes well with anything. It goes well with, mezcal, tequila, gin, vodka. Just put an egg white in there. I'm going to give this thing a nice little whip. Dry shake. Bartending sitting down. Yeah.
We've seen a lot of it.
Yeah. Handy cocktail glass. Boom. Now I'm just going to give it a nice shake.
Nice.
Boom.
Such a foreign thing now.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's beautiful.
So I like to garnish it with some Sour Patch Kids. Little Sour Patch Kids there.
Lovely.
I'm going to add a little bit of the malic acid on top. The malic acid is the acid that comes from green apples. So I kind of like to use green apples in this bad boy, but there it is. Sour Patch Kid.
Wish that was in my hand right now. Well done, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Staying in touch. If you guys have specific questions, at Julian Thomas Cox at IG. Here's your phone number.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to text you,
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool, man. Thank you for your candid breakdown of what's going on. We'll bring you back in a moment. We're gonna step aside for a second and do our 5 questions with Ben, and we'll be right back to you. All right. You're muted, Ben.
All right, I'm back.
All right. What's up, man?
Just hanging out, watching this guy put some artwork together.
Right on. All right, here we go. You ready?
Fired.
Favorite quote from Steve Casey?
It's, I don't know if it's a quote, but it's when she's like really serious and she's like, heard? Like, I'm going to say that's probably.
Yeah.
This is really my favorite part, where Pete just tries to embarrass me for 10 minutes.
That's really great. There's got to be one of those in here. That's for sure. That's like the extension of Tom Nowinkowski, basically. Yeah. All right. Favorite meal in Wildwood that my dad did not make?
I actually really hate seafood, so it's not your dad's food.
Perfect. That's everybody.
But I remember we had the barbecue guy there, and in front of me was Sean, and he's like the famous vegan. And I was like, the guy was like, what do you want, brisket or that? I'm like, can I get the everything plate? So he literally put every piece of meat on there, and I ate like a fat kid.
There you go. Well done. Good job. Yeah, we try and do our best, but certain purveyors are not the most vegan friendly.
We all have vegan food at that meal. I just want to put that out.
There was vegan food there. I was just eating all the meat.
Yes.
All the meat. Good protein. All right. Favorite Tiki by the Sea memory?
Probably getting afraid on the roller coasters because I hate roller coasters, but I still did it anyways. Or maybe sitting through the freezing rain, learning about Tiki.
Oh yeah,
classic.
Yeah.
I really thought it was going to be where it took you 24 hours to get to Fort Lauderdale last year.
Ooh.
I would really want to say when I iced the Patron rep, but I think I'd get the devil eyes from Steve again.
Oh. You made me text you right now.
New icing. What's happening these days with the Utes?
With me?
No, with the Utes. What are they doing? Is anybody still icing anybody? What's going on anymore?
Yeah, it still happens up here. I don't know about the rest of the world, but
right.
We still ice people in Idaho.
Setting the trends.
Dying on the trends.
All right. Weirdest thing you saw. Weirdest.
Probably the Idaho potato booth on the boardwalk. If bartending doesn't work out, I can always work at the booth in New Jersey.
You're the ambassador for the state, literally.
Haven't you seen the Tiki shirt?
Look at it. So
good. That's right.
Got the state on it. It's really great.
Yeah. Things you can order from Japan.
Oh, there's Aaron's coming back. He had to step away for a second here. Things you can order from Japan. Do you think they know about Idaho? I'm sorry.
That's the biggest problem. Everybody calls it Iowa.
It's the other I state. The other I state.
Yeah. Iowa's been in the news a lot lately. I know the difference. All right. Tell us what's up in Boise right now.
We're kind of halfway open, but the bars are still doing a lot of to-go cocktails, canned cocktails. That just got legalized right at the beginning of COVID. Cocktail scene is probably the best it's been in years. It used to just be like sex on the beaches and Long Islands. And now it's like you can actually get a good gimlet or a zombie or something at multiple places. So you can find real cocktails in really cool spots. So the cocktail game's on point. Obviously, beer in the Northwest is really cool. So really just killing it with good beverages. So
you gonna tip us some beer, dude? I'm out of beer.
I can send you some tiki juice. It's one of our seltzers we make.
Yeah, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's all pod flavor, so it's pretty good.
All right. Intriguing. Steve, what do you got?
I miss you, Ben, and I love Boise. I think it's great. Every time I've been there, it's incredible.
Yeah.
The Basque food is,
Yeah. I miss your
Did
hubs.
you say Basque food?
yeah.
We're the second largest bass population outside of that.
Wow. All right. Now you're talking.
So.
Yeah.
Steve, how many times have you been to Idaho?
3 or 4.
Wow.
Listen,
Steve is just everywhere. Like
Everywhere. Anywhere in America that
I
you
Yeah,
got
bro.
I got
want
two jobs.
Steve has been there 8 times.
Listen. Well, listen, this is a hug I'm pretending to give you. You got it.
Hug it out. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for your patience. Julian, let's bring you back.
Julian, it was
Hey.
great.
It was awesome. I'm sure people
Awesome.
have questions. We appreciate the time. Good to see your face, most importantly.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Excellent. Just a reminder here, next week, Mariah Kunkel will be back to talk about the next wave. Had a really great discussion with her about Tiki, where we're going, how to respect the culture. This is going to be a really good one. As always, it's been a blast. Looking forward to seeing you guys again. Be safe out there.